Good morning, and welcome to another edition of Lovin Daily. Hi Tim, how are you?
Not bad. Another
Nice.
another week. Quite an
No-
interesting day yesterday, right?
Yeah, another week of Lovin Daily as well. It's a Monday, and I'm just gonna give you the headlines of today before we start discussing them. So first of all, some great news. Malta has registered 0 cases of COVID-19 yesterday, and what the health minister has said is Malta successfully turning a tsunami into a creek. We also had a number of fines issued by the police yesterday, so a very busy weekend for them. 100 people fined, including 18 people found partying in Baħar. We'll talk a bit about that as well. Another very interesting case by the police is the anti-terrorism squad charging 5 men for exporting vessels to Libya. And we'll talk a bit about what we know about that so far, and also what the company involved has said this morning. A sad story about a young footballer who is fighting for his life, but getting a lot of support from the football community. And a nice story to end the session with: dolphins enjoying Malta's quiet harbors as you know the rest of the country remains quite slow. So let's start with the first story. Tim, can you give us a bit of an update on the how many cases we've registered so far and what this means in terms of the flattening of the curve?
Yes. So basically, for the first time since, well, not since the pandemic began, but since local transmission was confirmed in Malta, we confirmed 0 new cases yesterday. Now, this follows a pattern that has emerged in recent days of very low number of cases. So, over the past few days, we've seen 1 new case, 2 new cases, and meanwhile we've also seen quite a few recoveries. So if you look at the graph of active cases, which is the people who are currently infected, it has gone down quite dramatically from a high point of 252, if I'm not mistaken, to 162 now. So it's fewer than 200 people, fewer than 100 fewer people who are infected as now. So talk. So obviously, this doesn't mean that we've eliminated the virus. There's still a chance that probably some people still do have it and they don't even know it. And we'll hear the latest updates today. But you have to look at the trend always. And the trend for Malta in recent days has very clearly been downwards.
So I guess now it's all about whether we're going to now announce our exit strategy, right? As in the Prime Minister and the Health Minister have both spoken about the relaxation of measures possibly happening in the next few days. We know that later on this week there's Workers' Day, we've got a public holiday as well. So what are you expecting, Tim? Do you think that there'll be some interesting movements there in terms of the relaxation of the measures?
Absolutely. I expect some announcements to be made this week. Just to bear in mind, practically every single European country has now either started easing measures or announced plans to do so. So Malta is one of the few countries which haven't announced even any preliminary deadlines in terms of timelines, right? I mean, it's going to be gradual for sure. That's what we know. We know they're going to suddenly introduce. I would lift all the measures all at once. They're going to be gradual, and just like they were introduced gradually, so too will they be relaxed gradually as the World Health Organization is advising. So you lift some, wait a few weeks, assess the situation, and then perhaps lift some more.
And some of the ones that could be lifted might not be the ones, where, we can hang out at bars and restaurants or even go to shops again. It might even just be the small things like more operations being allowed in hospital, right?
Yeah.
These sort of measures.
I mean, there's many measures that were introduced. I don't expect. Obviously, the elective surgery issue is an important issue, but at the end of the day, I think most people are really looking at the actual easing of social restrictions as well. So I do expect some kind of timeline for when they're going to be issued. Like not necessarily, the government will say we're going to lift them next week or we're going to lift them whenever, but I think we do need to know a kind of preliminary timeline for when for when these will be lifted. At the end of the day, like many countries who have been, way worse impacted than Malta have announced them. So Italy actually announced its own exit strategy yesterday. I mean, obviously everything is subject to change, but I don't see why we shouldn't release these plans.
What's interesting as well is last week we had Finance Minister Edward Cicluna on COVID calls, and he said that one of the measures from an economic perspective that would have the biggest impact is allowing childcare again. Obviously, we know that schools are not operating at the moment. Children are seen as not only vulnerable but also very vulnerable to spreading the virus. So a lot of people though are not able to go out to work because they don't have anyone to look after their kids. Especially the elderly are people who tend to take care of kids for working parents, and now absolutely cannot. I think to move on to the second story, which is quite related as well in terms of the relaxation of measures. Over the weekend, the police fined 100 people for breaching the only up to 3 people in public regulation. We also had a number of other fines, 67 speeding fines, 3 people breaching quarantine, 1 fine to an establishment. And interestingly, 18 people found partying in Baħar over the weekend. I think that's something that a lot of people had a lot to say about, in the sense that everyone else seems to be really obeying these rules, and Malta's being quite successful in terms of its fight against COVID because we're obeying the rules. And then you have 18 people going out in public partying. But you had an interesting story this weekend, Tim, as well, about how there's a lot of house parties happening anyway, and there's nothing illegal with those, right? Even though Charmaine Gauci had something to say about us still following social distancing rules when we are in private.
So basically, the police confirmed with us that it is not illegal for people to gather in private properties. So the law that stipulates that people in groups of more than 3 will be fined €100 each only applies to public areas, and there is a point to be made about not wanting the police or the state to start interfering in your private house, because you start allowing that and you really risk opening the floodgates to some very anti-democratic maneuvers. But then again, there's also this contradiction at play, right? So you can't go out and meet your friends at the beach. You can't go to a bar with them. But if you have a large house and you have some space, you can just hold a house party there. And there's nothing that anyone can do about it.
Mm-hmm. So, but obviously, we had some advice as well from the Superintendent of Public Health, Charmaine Gauci, which is that, guys, even if you do have those, even if it's not against the law, do take precautions for yourselves and for other people. At the end of the day, that still applies. Interesting comment we received as well this morning is, when are the hairdressers going to be open? I think one of the measures from a real life kind of perspective that people miss most is being able to have decent grooming. Relatable. So the next story, anti-terrorism squad charging 5 men for exporting vessels in Libya. There's some this story sounds really crazy, I guess, that there's a company in Malta that seems to be supplying ribs, so rubber-hulled inflatable boats, so these sort of dinghies that are used for migrant smuggling. And they've been charged for doing those in breach of the sanctions, the EU sanctions against Libya. This morning, the company had issued a right of reply to the media, right? Tim, what are they saying?
So basically, their argument. So first of all, the charges against them are that they breached sanctions on Libya, on EU sanctions on Libya by exporting 2 of these vessels to a Dubai company, UAE company, which was based in Libya. Now, their argument is, and without having the necessary permission from the Maltese authorities. Now they're saying they did. They're saying they got permission from customs, they got permission from the police, and these people who they had exported had actually they had evacuated from Libya had actually landed in Malta. It wasn't a big secret or anything that it was all done in the open, and then they left according to the regular procedure. So we really have to see how it plays out. There were a lot of reports and rumors about the owner of this vessel chartering company, a certain James Fenech. So he's in business with Joe Portelli, major developer. There were some links. I'm not exactly sure what to say. I don't want to jump the gun here, but there were some people who had spotted him with Eric Prince, who's the founder of the famous U.S. military company Blackwater, and we'll have to see how this develops.
And this guy is being described as an arms dealer, right?
I haven't. I have seen reports describing him as an arms dealer. He does seem to own a weapon shop. To me, that doesn't mean necessarily. That's what I think when I hear the word arms dealer. To be honest, I don't know if there's anything, deeper than that, or that's it. But it's a story that's going to develop in the near future, I'm sure.
Yeah, so watch this space, lovinmalta.com, for more stories and developments about this story and others. Another story, very sad. Two quite sad stories this morning. So we know that a young footballer is fighting for his life after he got hit by a car 2 or 3 days ago. An 18-year-old who was, an aspiring footballer, and there's a lot of tributes being paid by other footballers to try and encourage him, I guess. And in the meantime, one of his friends was also found dead overnight, and we just had a story about that. So another young man died. We're not sure what the cause of death is yet. It hasn't been announced, but it seems to be a medical thing. Tim, can you tell us anything more about this case of the young footballer?
Yes, it was very tragic. Obviously, as you said, we don't know how he died, but he was extremely young. He was 18 years old, and it's a massive shock, right? I mean, it was very sudden. So up until a day or two ago, he was posting get well soon messages for his friend Matteo, who was involved in that traffic accident you spoke about in Rabat, and then he just happened to die himself at such a young age. And
yeah, so just to be clear, two cases. Matteo Grima, the footballer, 18 years old, who is fighting for his life after a car hit him, and Emerson Gatt, I want to say, a young man, a friend of his, who died yesterday, and we're not yet sure how. On a more positive note, we had really sweet videos emerging over the weekend of dolphins enjoying the harbours, both in Slema and the Grand Harbour. And we'll just show a photo actually of one of them. This is someone was stand up paddling and had this dolphin site right near him. I think it is quite interesting, Tim, in terms of how the environment has kind of revived since COVID. We had the environment minister on COVID calls recently who confirmed that the air quality has really improved. And other stories are true. And obviously here we're seeing dolphins enjoying the quiet ports. What do you think about that, Tim?
I think it's also a real, I think now the whole world has been, literally confronted with the question, how much are you willing to sacrifice for a better environment, right? Like as we've seen now, reduced human activity, including fewer boats out at sea, fewer cars, is helping the environment, and yes, is encouraging dolphins to come back to the shore. But you can rest assured that the plan would include having more boats entering the harbor as well. So
yeah, so maybe this is going to be a bit short-lived in terms of the environmental impacts. But I think it's also a nice lesson that maybe all these measures have been extremely extreme in terms of, normal life, but maybe if we do it once every so often, the earth wouldn't be in such a mess. So that's it for today from Lovin Daily. Don't forget to catch COVID calls today at 4 p.m. We'll be speaking about the gaming sector, and we have some interesting people from the Malta Gaming Authority and from one of the biggest operators in Malta as well. So we'll see what's happening over there as well. That's it from us today. I've been Chris Perugine. This has been Tim Diacono hosting Lovin Daily today, and have a great week and a day full of loving.